licensing agreement to actually do a vaccine, get this, vaccine against depression, against the inflammatory processes. A little bit Star Trek-ish, but on the other hand, when you have a physical cause, that's where we are in healthcare in 2021.
Hey there, Midas Letter subscribers, viewers, traders, and investors. My guest right now is Dr. Lyle Oberg. He's the CEO of MYND Life Sciences. Mr. Oberg, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so let's start with an overview. What is the business of MYND Life Sciences?
Well, what we are a company who is exploring the anti-inflammatory benefits of psilocybin and other psychedelics as they apply to depression and other CNS disorders. We've managed over a period of about 10 years to discover the pathway that actually turns the body from an inflammatory state to an anti-inflammatory state, essentially utilizing a trigger. We also found that psilocybin is what can work on that trigger, and that's what we're looking into.
Psilocybin. So this is interesting because I've noticed that there are increasing numbers of companies exploring psilocybin as a treatment for various mental health conditions. It seems like depression is a big one. And as I always like to tell all of my guests, that I view my general sunny disposition and outlook on life to a pretty assiduous exploration of the psychedelic realm as a teenager and young man. So tell me,
you were an explorer.
I was a psychonaut of the first order, I can assure you. Yes, LSD, THC, MDA, you name it. But that was on a recreational basis. I think the side effect was that, it basically caused you to hit the reset button in your own mind and your self-awareness and perception. It gives you the ability to sort of perceive yourself from a third-party perspective, which allows you to see where you're worrying needlessly, worrying about things you can't change, ignoring the things that matter. So I think that psychedelics have a great place in the future of mental health. Tell me, how is Mind Health starting to incorporate this? How do patients come to you? What is the process?
Sure. So we've actually gone beyond the hallucinatory side of things, and we are actually concentrating on how these psychedelics actually work in the brain. And when you go back probably 3 or 4 years, the theory of depression is changing quite substantially. You're now seeing depression as an inflammatory state, a neuro-inflammatory state in the brain. And psilocybin and the psychedelics work as being anti-inflammatory. So it may well be that the hallucinogenic component that you're talking about is more of a side effect than the actual benefit. And the benefit is probably from the anti-inflammatory effect, which is what we're looking at. We've identified, for example, the trigger, as I mentioned, that turns you from a pro-inflammatory state to an anti-inflammatory state. And all of this has already been studied in animal models. So quite literally, you have a depressed mouse that is not eating and is not doing mazes. You stimulate this particular gene and he runs around in the mazes, eats, all of these things. So we're taking that research, and obviously there's a ton more, but we're doing that research and applying it to the human body and the humans. And the results we've been having have been amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the status of this? I mean, are you strictly clinical research then? Or are you developing a protocol or a treatment for humans? How's the business going to evolve?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're getting into clinical trials. So we're in the preclinical phase right now. We expect to be out of that by fourth quarter of this year, first quarter of next year. We're already planning 4 trials. We're looking at sepsis. We're looking at COVID storm, or cytokine storm, sorry. We're looking at depression, and we're looking at our biomarker. So the biomarker is a really interesting component because up until now, depression was diagnosed by essentially your symptoms. So on what's called a DSM-5, if you have 5 of 8 symptoms, you're depressed.
Hmm.
What we're now saying then, if depression is caused by inflammation, we can quantify and qualify that inflammation and let you know, first of all, diagnosis, but probably more importantly is monitor it. So establish your baseline. As you go down, you get worse. As you go up, you get better, that type of thing. So we're doing that as well. And then the third component of this, we just signed a licensing agreement to actually do a vaccine, get this, a vaccine against depression, against the inflammatory processes. You know, a little bit Star Trekish, but on the other hand, when you have a physical cause, that's where we are in healthcare in 2021.
Wow, that is fascinating. That is fascinating. So how long until these treatments are going to be available to people who are suffering from, you know, things like depression?
Well, we'll be into our clinical or into our phase 2 trials probably first quarter, second quarter of next year. So within a year, we'll be well accelerated into it. The nice thing about 2021 is that the clinical trials, the way that they are being done now is actually considerably faster. So we expect to have a drug out from our leading candidates probably mid next year.
Fascinating. That's really interesting. Then is this a case where there's going to be a long period of investment and reinvestment before you're able to generate revenue?
We hope not. First of all, from our biomarker, we expect to be on a revenue generation first quarter of next year, because a biomarker obviously does not have to go through the same tests that a drug has to. So we will have that up and going the first quarter of next year. And again, the biomarker is as a simple dry blood test. So it's not as though you have to go to a complicated laboratory. You can actually just do the dry blood test and send it in. And we use a mass spectrometer to analyze it. So it's that will be a pathway to revenue sooner as opposed to later. We think because of all the research that we've already done on psilocybin and the psilocybin analogs, that we'll hopefully be in a revenue position within a couple of years. We want to accelerate this. The information that we have shows that this could be a potentially, life-saving drug kind of thing, and we want to make sure it gets out as quickly as we can.
Sure.
The other point to make on this, sorry, just one other point, is we're doing this research at the University of British Columbia. So this is not being done in some Caribbean country or anything like that. It's at UBC, one of the most renowned universities, certainly in Canada, and probably in the top 20 or 30 in the world. And that means a lot. It means a lot, especially as you go before the regulators, as you go before the FDA, all of these things. So we're hoping that that can accelerate us going through.
Mm-hmm. So then the regulators and the regulatory environment that is necessary for you to advance these products and these protocols, is it something that you're finding is the government's increasingly taking a proactive, this is a benefit, not a threat kind of position to these things, which is completely opposite of what it's been for the last 20 years. So what has changed in the regulatory environment?
Well, from our point of view, we haven't had a problem at all in the regulatory environment. We've got 38 what are called Section J exemptions, which means we can study 38 different analogs of psilocybin. And contextually, there's probably 45 of these licenses in Canada, and we have 38 of them. So we're not having a problem at all with the regulatory side. I think on a general rule, you're starting to see more and more patients that are being approved. A lot of them are essentially palliative care, but you are seeing a more open attitude from Health Canada, and I think that's really, really positive. I think, though, the key to all of this and the key to psychedelics is you're going to have to know how they work. If you want to go through an FDA analysis, it just isn't enough to say, well, people are getting better. You need to show how they work. And that's the advantage that our company has, is that we know how they work. We know the how and why they work. And that's what we're going to be moving forward with. So we'll be able to build a full case for the FDA and Health Canada.
Sure. For interested parties, do you publish your information on your website by any chance?
Yeah, absolutely. All our press releases are on our website. Obviously, we're a publicly traded company, so we can't put all of our secrets out on the website. But as they're announced, they're certainly being put on our website, and I would encourage people to follow it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm more interested in the clinical data and the how and why it works aspect. Having having experienced it extensively, I have my own ideas about how and why it works, but those are very much based on experience and not at all data. So I'm curious to see how my belief in how things work with the psychedelics actually compares to how they actually work in the science. And so that's why I asked that. I don't imagine you publish that in press releases.
We haven't yet, but we certainly will be showing all of that, showing exactly how it works. We've coined the phrase human mycogene, for example. We've got 4 patents out right now, and we're slowly starting to leak that information out as we're able to under the Public Securities Commission. So we're in a really good position at this point. And again, it's the kind of thing that we're going to build a fulsome case to be able to take through to the FDA as quickly as possible.
You bet. Dr. Lyle Oberg, I thank you for your time today. A very interesting story. We're going to follow up with interest in due course. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
You bet.